Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the latest episode of The Walking Dead, Dead or Alive or. As always with these reviews there will be full spoilers throughout, so please don't watch if that will be a problem. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Why is it always that when I think The Walking Dead might finally be turning a corner, when I think things might just be getting better, an episode like Dead or Alive or arrives and hits me like a slap in the face? After praising last week's episode for being one of the best entries so far this season, this latest installment undoes most of its good work by having its characters act in completely moronic ways, making it really hard for me to care about most of those who feature. I'll start off with the worst offenders first and then move on to discussing the moments of this week that perhaps weren't as bad. As most of you have probably already figured out by now, Tara is the one who bears the brunt of most of my complaints, as she was, to put it simply, a bloody idiot throughout, treating Dwight in such a manner that made me dislike her even more than I already did. First, she nonchalantly watched on as he struggled with a walker. Then she had a little moan to Rosita, asking her if there's any reason he's still breathing. Then finally, she tried to emulate Rick's old buddy Shane by being an absolute scumbag and dragging Dwight out into the woods on his own just so she could kill him. Now, perhaps I am a bit biased as Dwight has been one of my favourite characters on the show since season 7, but to me it feels ridiculous that the show keeps portraying the likes of Tara and Daryl trying to kill him when he's done nothing of late but help Rick and his group. He's been constantly providing Rick with information concerning the Saviour's outposts, he's helped to sabotage some of their assault attempts, and when he saw that Rosita, Tara and Daryl were in trouble during the mid-season finale, he even shot and killed some of the Saviours in order to protect them, blowing his own cover in the process. Hell, come the end of this installment he gave himself up to the Saviours, protecting Tara and the rest of the Alexandrians as he knew he could lead them off their trail, with him doing this even though he was aware he could have been killed on the spot if Laura had relayed the message that he was a traitor back to Negan. I'm sure some people will argue that he simply ran to the Saviours to avoid Tara shooting him, but for me he had just as much of a chance as being killed by them anyway, so I would say he did it more due to the fact that he wanted to help Alexandria than due to thoughts of self-preservation. And despite all this, The Walking Dead keeps wasting its time in trying to make Dwight out to be this really bad person, just because he killed one side character, a character who I should note was one of the dullest and pointless characters on the show anyway. I didn't care about her death then, and I certainly don't care for repeatedly witnessing Tara's various attempts to get vengeance. The problem the show has is that although only a few months have passed in the world of The Walking Dead since Denise died, for viewers it's been an entire 2 years since this happened. So whilst in theory it should make sense for Tara to still be pissed at Dwight as not a huge amount of time has gone by, your average viewer on the other hand has probably A, either completely forgotten about it happening in the first place, or B, due to it being 2 seasons ago, no longer cares. I mean, people say that the Negan arc has dragged on for long enough, but I would say the whole Tara and Daryl wanting to kill Dwight narrative has gone on for even longer and is much less interesting. Going back to the previously mentioned Negan for a moment now, for me he was another character this time around whose actions greatly confused me. Last time he spent most of his time preaching about how people are a resource, and how the Saviours only kill in order to send a message. Well, this week out of nowhere he decides that everyone at the Hilltop must die. Wait, what? During certain moments it honestly felt like last week's episode didn't even happen. I mean, how can Negan suddenly go from lecturing Simon that he and his group save people and that they need as many people alive as possible, to now having this attitude of screw it, let's just lace all our weapons in walker blood and kill everyone. It just doesn't make any sense. As a comic reader it was nice to see the Saviours finally take to covering their weapons in walker blood and guts, as for me this was one of my favourite moments in the All Out War saga. But the reasoning behind Negan's decision to do this on the TV show didn't fit in with his pre-established character motivations at all. Why go through all the bother of having Negan explain the Saviour's mission statement last time around, only for him to completely ignore it this episode? It comes to me as no surprise that Dead or Alive or had a different writer and director to the previous installment, as it feels like there was no communication at all between the representative creative teams responsible for each episode. Maggie and the Hilltop did make things marginally better, but still not a lot really happened here at all. I know that Maggie is pregnant, so of course there are limits to things that she can do, but for me since Glenn died and she settled at the Hilltop she's been incredibly boring. I really used to enjoy watching her, but now all we see her do is stroll around the Hilltop's garden area, debating about decisions that she needs to make. I've seen Kirkman say that he believes that Maggie's character was allowed to evolve and develop after Glenn's death, and for the comics I do agree with this. However, when it comes to the TV show, I don't really think as of yet Glenn's death can be justified by her character's narrative path at all. Like most of the characters on the show, Maggie just seems to be continuously going around in circles when it comes to the idea of what constitutes good and evil. One minute she wants to kill all the Saviours. Evil. Then she decides against this and takes them prisoner. Good. Then she debates about killing them again. Evil. Then she decides not to. Good. Then she kills one of them and cuts their rations. Evil. Then she decides to let them roam the grounds if they have behaved well. Good, and so on and so forth. It's just a constant cycle of going backwards and forwards, and it's gotten to the point where by now I wish she would just take a solid stance and stick with it. I mean, the fact that she even entertains the idea of allowing Gregory to talk to her is bloody ridiculous. Moving on now finally to the only narrative arc that prevented this episode from being a complete train wreck, as we finally caught up with Father Gabriel. Before I examine what the crazy priest actually got up to, I need to congratulate Seth and the makeup team for making Father Gabe truly look awful. I mean, every time the camera focused on him he was fully covered in sweat, with his eyeballs appearing red raw. He looked incredibly ill, and I think Seth deserves praise for his performance, as do the team who are responsible in making him appear so rough. Anyway, Gabe spends the majority of this episode convinced that him bringing Dr. Carson to Maggie is a mission he was given by God. It's his purpose and it's what he needs and must do. It was actually kind of refreshing and uplifting to see Gabriel so full of faith and self-assured despite how ill he actually was. It certainly made a change from most of the mopey other characters on the show. For a while it actually seemed like Father G was right to place his faith in God, as he and the doctor luckily managed to stumble across a house which just so happened to be home to some much needed antibiotics and a vehicle. I'll admit that some of the coincidental events in which Gabriel found exactly what he was looking for did border on being a bit ridiculous. I mean, seeing a vision impaired Gabe accidentally push a piggy bank off from a table only for it to crash on the floor and shatter into pieces, just for it to happen to contain car keys inside for a vehicle stored at the property, did seem like some really awful writing. However, once the saviours arrived to find Gabriel attempting to drive away, it all made a lot more sense. It's clear that it was the writer's intentions to set Gabriel up for a massive fall. After seemingly having his faith rewarded, by the end of the episode Gabe came crashing back down to earth with a bang, as the doctor he sought to transport was shot and killed and he was recaptured by the saviours and sent back to Negan. His mission ended up being a colossal failure, and the purpose that he so desperately craved was only something he created in his own head. It was never his divine duty to move Dr. Carson, he just desperately wanted to believe it was. Come the end of the episode, Gabriel was broken, the doctor was dead, he wouldn't be able to help Maggie, his faith was unrewarded, and there he was sat almost blind in a room sorting bullet casings. As Eugene so eloquently put it, that was his purpose now. There's something remarkably poetic about the situation he found himself ending up in, and it really was tragic seeing him defeated, forced to sort bullets that would only go on to be used to kill those that he had sought to protect. Even though Gabriel is alive, seeing him in the bullet factory was one of the sadder moments on the show, and it actually hit me a lot harder than some of the instances in which The Walking Dead has tried so desperately to evoke a reaction from me. I found this to be much more subtle and thought-provoking, and the show certainly could use this as an example in how to make viewers care for a character. With that out of the way, that's pretty much all I have to say for this instalment, and I can't really say this episode has many redeeming qualities. Tara was incredibly annoying. Negan seems to have completely ignored everything that happened last week, and the more I see Maggie, the more I wish the show would focus its attention on someone else instead of her. Father Gabriel was by far the best part of this instalment, and the only thing that stopped it from being a complete dud. Next week's episode needs to do a hell of a lot better than this. So there you go, that's my thoughts on the latest episode of The Walking Dead. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, until next time, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.